In this episode, we're talking about when is a good time to tell your brand story. When should you be telling your brand story, or when should you start brand storytelling? I feel like this question can be asked if you have not a strong sense of what brand storytelling is. So if you haven't seen my video on what is brand storytelling, you can check it out right here, where I go into more of the mechanics underlying brand storytelling, and that it isn't just a singular story that defines your brand. What brand storytelling is, it's the expression of your narrative positioning, right? And that there's actually several different layers of story that your company and your organization is communicating. Because this can be an audible story, like a story that you're hearing, right? So like a story that you're actually speaking, that you're saying, a story that you're conveying through your copy, through your messaging, right? But it's also, your brand story is also something that you're conveying through the visuals, through your color palette, through your typefaces that you're using, through your design that you're continuing to do over and over again, through the style of your design, right? Like each specific aspect is telling a different part of your overall brand story. And so this question isn't as simple as, okay, 3 months into your company's life cycle, that's when you tell your brand story, or 3 years into your company's life cycle, that's when you should invest in brand storytelling. Really, it depends on what type of business do you have, and what type of story should you be telling based upon your brand's development. Okay, so we'll start with the first one first. Okay, so the whole point of brand storytelling is to establish trust between your organization and your audience, and really cultivate a strong relationship. People buy from you, right? That we buy from organizations that we know, like, and trust. Okay. And knowing a brand and liking a brand, those are, well, let's just start with knowing a brand is created through direct marketing, right? Like cultivating brand awareness, making yourself known in the marketplace. That's easily cultivated through direct marketing, right? Direct response marketing. But once you get into building an affinity for a company and trusting a company, that takes cultivating and pouring into your audience and giving them a level of value. And that's when brand storytelling is necessary. So brand storytelling helps your organization create that bridge. The stories that you tell help create that bridge between your organization and your audience in order to cultivate that relationship, to build trust with your audience. Because the stronger your trust, the stronger your loyalty of your customer base, and then the more that they feel valued, the more that you show them that you value them, the more that they feel valued, and the more value they give you in response to that, right? Because brand power ultimately equals pricing power. That's a kind of a skeezy way of phrasing it, right? But if we just kind of keep it real base factual things, like you pay more for the brands that you admire than what you consider a commodity. You don't care about commodities. You pay for what you care about. Okay, so that's what brand storytelling is. So depending on what type of business you have, right, really determines whether or not you should be marketing from a brand storytelling standpoint or marketing from a direct marketing standpoint. If your business will succeed based on the relationships that you build, if you're a relationship-based business, okay, then you should be doing brand storytelling. You should be approaching your marketing from a brand storytelling perspective. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold right now, so I'm going to sound ridiculous. I'll probably clear my throat and sneeze more than I usually do. Hold on. Okay, so if your business is based on the relationship, the strength of the relationship with your customers, right? If that is paramount to your business, then you should be approaching your marketing from a brand storytelling perspective. If you have a very transactional business, then it makes absolutely no sense to invest in brand storytelling. It doesn't matter, right? If your customer base just does business with you once, if it's very transactional, then it doesn't matter how strong your brand is. In fact, investing in your brand strength might actually be a mistake. You might actually be cutting into your profit margin because you're investing in something that doesn't matter, right? Because you don't need to cultivate relationships with your customer base because they're just doing business with you once. So you're most likely better off served with a direct response strategy. But if your business depends on repeat business, if it depends on customer lifetime value, right, then you should be approaching your marketing from a brand storytelling perspective. Now, when should you tell your brand story? Okay, so that's should you? Who should? Okay, so if you're a relationship-based business, if your entire engagement depends on the strength of that relationship, when do you begin telling your brand story? All the time. All the time. It's not a question of when, it's a question of what type of brand story should you be telling throughout the life cycle of your brand, okay? And so I believe there's 5 stages of brand development that a company goes through, and that as you begin to understand those 5 different stages of your brand development, you have an understanding of what type of brand storytelling should you be doing and should you be investing in. The 5 levels of brand development, you've got awareness, lifestyle, product, philanthropic, and iconic. Okay, so stage 1. Stage 1 is awareness. This is essentially when you're trying to stake your claim in the marketplace, when you're establishing yourself in the market. That's what stage 1 is all about. It's developing brand awareness. It's letting people know that you exist. And so as you can tell, like a strong part of stage 1 is direct response marketing, because a business has to survive. It has to get initial sales, and you have to get revenue flowing in to your organization. And the way that you do that quickly is through direct response marketing. Brand storytelling is an exponential growth. It works on the basis of compounding, right? So as you're investing for your retirement, as you begin to invest for retirement, at first it's like you haven't really at first you don't fully benefit from the compounding interest, right? You're just kind of like, it's a meager growth, right? But as years go by and as you continue to diligently throw money in there, you can have a few $1 million by the time you retire, right? So that's how brand storytelling works. It works off of the basis of compounding, right? And so in order to offset that compounding initially, it requires you to do direct response marketing, to advertise, to put out direct ads, to make sure that you're getting eyes on your organization, right? And people are starting to understand who you are, because a lot of your brand story is developed by your relationship, by the interaction you have with your customers, and you can't have that interaction unless you have customers. So you need customers. So you have to hit the pavement, and you have to do the short-term wins that work. The problem with constantly doing short-term wins or short-term strategies is that those strategies inevitably cheapen your brand over time. They don't work. And so you have to come up with new strategies, new techniques, right? So you can't rely entirely on them, but you can rely on them for, I think it's about either 1.5 years or 2.5 years. I'll put up the stats on there and a link to the study so you can see this for yourself. But that's ultimately what you're getting at. There's a fly flying around here. Gosh. So essentially in phase 1, you're just trying to get awareness. You're trying to get people to know that you exist. And you're basically showing them and communicating to them in that stage your value proposition. you're positioning yourself within the market, and the brand story that you're telling is you're telling the story about like why you exist, why you created the company, and you're telling the story of how you're directly solving the problem of your customer. At this stage, your brand is what you do. That's ultimately what it is, because you're trying to get people to understand really quickly. Like the purpose of getting brand awareness is you want to get them an instant understanding of who you are, right? You're not trying to go for this lofty story yet. You can't be Apple when you start, right? Keep in mind, when Apple started, they were Apple Computers, Inc. Apple was the thing it sold when it started. It was its computer. Its first computer was called the Apple, okay? It didn't just jump out of the gate talking about think differently. That came later in its life cycle. A company is always, a brand is always what it does, what it produces or the service it offers. That's always what it is when it begins. So in stage 1, your organization is what you do. Yeah, the story you tell about that is you explain why you do it, because explaining the why and the reason behind it gives meaning to what you do, and that's the cultivation of your brand story. But the brand story that you're telling is you're telling the story. It's the SB7, really. At this point, you're telling the story. It's like how you helped your customer solve this problem in this way, and that's what you do. And why did we start this company in the first place? Like you're kind of like staking your mission, but you can't lead with your mission yet because people don't know who you are and no one cares, right? You have to think about marketing is relationship. When you're meeting someone for the first time, you're trying to get an understanding of who that person is. You're looking to create a basket, some sort of a box that you can put that thing inside of. And without that box, you can't put deep meaning into the box yet. You're trying to think of a framework of how do I categorize this thing quickly. Once you're able to categorize it quickly, then the meaning itself can cultivate. Once you meet somebody, right, and you get a sense of who they are and what they're about, then the nuances of who they are and what they do, the complexity of their person can begin to unfold, right? Like their quirks. You might actually start appreciating them for their quirks, but you have no room for their quirks at the beginning. At the beginning, you're trying to categorize them. You're trying to put them in a box because the box is necessary. So at stage 1, embrace the box. It's about building awareness. When you get to stage 2 is when your brand becomes a lifestyle. You have essentially made your stake in the marketplace. People know who you are, okay? They have an awareness of what you're about. They have linked what you do with your organization. But as an organization grows, the product offerings start to grow. The product offerings start to develop because as you've been serving a specific customer base over time, you start to understand you can serve them in more unique and delightful ways here, and here, and you might add new features to your service or create completely new service offerings to address those concerns, or create new products to address this or address that. That may seem outside of your core initial business, right? But it is an inevitable expansion. As your brand identity grows beyond what is seen as the core, right? It makes sense that your story that you're telling has to transcend what you do. It has to transcend this joining of what you do to who you are. And now you have to become your mission. And now your brand story becomes the lifestyle. So you're promoting now an identity, a lifestyle for people. And it's because you're creating a larger identity umbrella for your organization. You've outgrown your box, and you now need to tell a bigger story about your brand, and therefore that story isn't about a thing, it's about a sort of like methodology. It's about a lifestyle. It's about an identity. And so that's what you do when you get into that level. Okay. So you get more into thought leadership at this time, right? Because people now see you as carving out a sort of path for them to follow, right? Like they've now had such an affinity for your brand that they might like, heck, they might take your sticker that you gave them and post it somewhere, right? Like it's just that your story's bigger. Now, you're still telling stories about what you do, but now these stories are almost like lower on the hierarchy because now they are specific to your different product sets or they're specific to your different services. But now you have an overarching story above them, which is your mission story. So therefore, since you have more of these at the bottom, your mission story now becomes more important and you give it more weight and you start to cultivate that over time, right? So you start talking about the lifestyle in stage 2. In stage 3, this is when, and also in stage 2, you're going to get more heavy into content marketing, right? Like your initial thing in stage 1 is a lot of direct response marketing to make sure that you can get initial client relationships and you can establish yourself in the marketplace. Stage 2 is when you might start launching content marketing campaigns for yourself because you're trying to, like I said, invest in thought leadership. You're cultivating a lifestyle, you're cultivating an identity, and that identity is cultivated through meaning and through values and through what you believe, and you want to kind of build upon what you believe and carve something out. So content marketing becomes extremely important at this time. What inevitably happens through pursuing your content marketing is you're going to build lead gens, you're going to build small offerings for your customer base in order to get them into your funnel so that way they can grow in a deeper relationship with you, potentially become a paying customer. What inevitably is going to happen is that people will start to demand that you begin to create a product out of these marketing value adds that you're producing. And so in level 3 is when your marketing actually becomes a product. It's when you start to get paid for your marketing. When you're in level 3, when you're in your marketing has become a product, what you've done is you've grown to a specific place where you've got so much attention that people are now demanding that you sell them your marketing, right? So basically, if you've got a blog, you've been putting out a bunch of blog articles, people might ask you, man, you should write a book. You should put this together into a book. When you're at that level of an audience, right? Like you can then start to just tell stories just to tell stories because your marketing material is clearly in a space where you're rewarding your audience and you're now continuing to add value to them. And now you can begin to just like entertain them. Okay. So you start to, your marketing becomes a product, it becomes some path of revenue, but also you can kind of relax on the, oh my gosh, we're going to make it, right? Because now you've established your brand in the marketplace. You've established a sort of lifestyle, an idea about who you are that's greater than just what you do, right? So at that time, it's now about how can we expand and deepen the experience of the people interacting with our brand. And that is when you can then just start create like a series that's just telling cool stories out there, right? Like that's when you can start doing stuff like that. Now, when you get to level 4 is when you get to philanthropic marketing, okay? So this is when you go beyond just bringing in a source of revenue and you actually start using your marketing to enact change in the world. You use your marketing to shape the culture around you. What's going to happen is you're going to start seeing, man, people are really digging these stories that we're saying, but why are we just using them for the sake of entertainment? Why don't we use these stories to actually shape the culture around us? And so what's going to happen then is you're going to start investing into your marketing for the sole purpose of advancing the mission of the organization. A really great example of a brand doing philanthropic marketing is Patagonia. Oh my gosh, they are like masters at this. And essentially what they're doing is they have created an entire film studio, right? So they've created like a production department within their brand, and that production department is basically financing documentaries, feature-length documentaries that advance their mission about creating a sustainable world. So they're really a clothing company, right? But they're really interested in food, sustainable food cultivation, and they're really interested in fishing, right? So they hate what are those fish farms? They really hate fish farms, and they hate what these chemical companies are doing to our soil. So they've got like several documentaries out there about the preservation of natural streams and farming in natural ways to preserve our topsoil. And that's just what they're doing with their marketing. They've just got films, and then they make those films, and then they run them on film circuits. And the first one that I saw of them was called Artificial. Really great documentary, absolutely awesome. Highly recommend that you check out Artificial. I'll leave a link for it in the description, so definitely go check it. But you're gonna need about I think 60 to 90 minutes to sit back, but trust me, it's worth it. Really awesome. So, but that's what happens. You create the opportunity where you actually start to leverage your marketing to change the world around you. After you've made such an impact into the world around you, you inevitably reach level 5 of your brand development. And level 5 is the iconic level, right? It's when your brand now becomes a cultural icon. You have established yourself in the marketplace. Your identity has grown to a lifestyle. You're out there. Your marketing is so strong, it's earning revenue for your organization. Now it's so strong that you're literally changing the culture around you. And because of all of that effort, you are now a cultural name. You're a cultural icon, right? So when you think about brands like Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike, right? Like these massive brands that have such rich brand value to them, those are iconic brands. And so that's the 5th stage. I don't understand how you go past being an icon. That's kind of like, now you can't give up once you're an icon, right? Like Coca-Cola actually experimented with this, where they stopped running ads in a specific region for a time, and their brand value and their sales just went down immediately. So you still have to be continuously doing marketing, right? You're still running the race, but you almost what happens at the iconic stage, and an indication that you're at the iconic stage is your audience now begins to create content about you, that you have not just shaped the world around you, but you've literally captivated the minds of your audience, and they are now world building around you, right? So this is the indication that Apple is at that stage, is because anytime anyone talks about brand storytelling, you always mention Apple. They're the easiest, most relatable example. Often they're a bit too overused, but the reason they're overused is because they are an icon. If you think about Disney, right? Just go on YouTube and if you have no idea that these things exist, you're going to be dumbfounded by how many YouTube channels are about people who go to Disney World, right? It's ridiculous. Okay. There's so many Disney World bloggers out there that it's crazy. Okay. But by the way, you guys, if you're one of them, very useful. Thank you very much. I ended up planning one of the best trips of my life with my wife for our first year anniversary because of your existence. So thank you. But that's what I mean by world building and hitting that iconic status, is that people inevitably start creating content about your organization, and they start to fuel. You've now done the work of inviting them into the story, and they now take ownership of your story and start running with it, right? So you see this best demonstrated through entertainment properties like Star Wars, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like this is when you really start to get a sense of the power of world building through things like fan fiction, right? So hope that helps you clear up your understanding of when you should be brand storytelling. The answer to that question is always, depending on what type of company you are. If you're just a transactional based business, don't bother brand storytelling. The strength of your brand probably won't help you too much if you're just having singular interactions with your customer base. If, however, your business depends upon the relationship between your customer, if your customer relationship is paramount, right, to the livelihood of your business, if your business depends upon repeat business, if your lifetime customer value is going to make or break your business, then yes, you should be doing brand storytelling all the time. And you should always be thinking about investing in your brand, because an investment in your brand is an investment in the value of your organization. And as you grow in your brand power, you grow in your pricing power, right? And then kind of thinking through, like, it's not a question of when you should tell your brand story. It's a question of what type of stories should I be telling? And that requires understanding the 5 stages of brand development throughout your company's life cycle. And so those stages, again, are awareness, lifestyle, product, philanthropic, and iconic. All right, as always, if you guys have any questions, you can reach me on Instagram at McNabb_storytelling. Also, we just started Twitter, so you can find us on Twitter at Storytelligent. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.